Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I want to talk a little bit about copper toxicity. This is something that comes up in my world a lot, and I think it's something that we really aren't that knowledgeable about, and just in the general, in the everyday world. And I think that so often this is a contributing factor. I'm not saying that this causes everything, because there are some people who will say like copper toxicity causes everything. I'm not saying it causes everything, but I find in my world that this is a huge contributing factor for so many things. And it's just, like so many things that I talk about, it's not something that conventional medicine or conventional doctors or practitioners really look for or see as a contributing factor. And when I talk through this, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Is it's so easy for it to happen. It's so easy for copper toxicity to happen in our body, especially in kind of the day and age that we live in. And this could be like, probably a 3 or 4 part series. So I'm just going to go kind of high level. I am going to get a little bit sciencey with some things, just because, per usual, I like for you to kind of know, the background and know what's happening in your body. And I think it's important. So I'm going to get a little bit sciencey, but that being said, I could go real deep into this, but I just want to give you the main points I want you to take away. I want you to understand what it is. I want you to understand how and why it's happening. And I want you to understand what it's doing to your body. Just so you know, again, this is all about you understanding your body at every level, and for you to understand possible reasons of why things are going haywire in your body, right? So let's start. I'm just going to start just kind of high level here, and copper toxicity, right? So what is copper for? Copper is a mineral, and it's for that's a tongue twister. Electron chain transport. It's for hemoglobin synthesis, like in your blood. It's for neurotransmitter activity. It's for immune health. It's for the synthesis of collagen, iron availability. It's anti-mold. It's antifungal. So you can see we need copper. And I want to be clear on that too. And we do need copper. Our bodies need copper, but it's a very delicate balance, because most of it is stored in the brain and then the liver. So you can see the brain and the liver, if most of it's stored there, if it gets to be too much, you could see how this could become a problem, right? The primary source, I will say this, the primary source of copper toxicity is deficiency. And it either being bio unavailable or just like, it's just not usable, right? And so here's the other thing. When you get copper toxicity because it's too much, this is the other thing that can get dangerous. When your liver gets full, because it's stored in the liver first, and then it's stored in the brain. When the liver gets full, then it goes to the brain. And here's where it becomes dangerous, when it's too much in both, right? So how does it get toxic? Well, first up, it's a buildup of stored bio unavailable copper in the body. And so this is what happens. And when I said before that the primary source of toxicity is deficiency, this means that you have this bio unavailable copper that's being stored up in the body. So your body is deficient because it's being stored in the body, right? And this is what can cause really physical and mental dysfunction, because it's being stored, like I said, in your brain and in your liver, and your body's not able to use it. So it's unbound and unstable. Unbound meaning it doesn't have the cofactors, the other minerals that it needs to go along with it to push it where it needs to go to be able to be used. It accumulates in the tissues, first in the liver and then in the brain. And this is something I can see when I run an HTMA or a hair tissue and mineral analysis, is because it's stored in the tissues. And what I'm measuring is a tissue. I'm measuring your hair when you're doing HTMA. And so I'm able to see what is happening. And a lot of times this is this isn't something you look at an HTMA and it's like you take it at face value. And I've talked about the HTMA before, and I've mentioned that you really need somebody who knows what they're doing to read an HTMA, because you honestly, you can interpret any lab 28 different ways, right? And it's all about correlating it to the symptoms and to exposure to different things and that kind of thing. But when I'm looking at an HTMA, and I'll get to this in a second, but there are basically like 12 factors that I can look at and kind of check the boxes to note if you are copper toxic, because there is no, and I'm going to be honest, there is no one marker where you look at and you're like, oh yeah, you got copper toxic. Like it's just like anything else. And that's the beauty of functional medicine and functional nutrition, is it's all about connecting the dots and finding patterns, because there is never one thing. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, it's never one contributing factor, right? It's multiple. And this is just one of them, one of many. So that being said, how does it get toxic? So I talked about it being like unbound and unstable, and it accumulates in the tissues, right? It's bio unavailable in the body. So what happened? How do you get it? Well, first, it can be passed to the baby. It can be passed to a baby. So if the mom is already copper toxic, copper toxicity can be passed to a baby. It can happen from xenoestrogens, and these are chemicals that act as estrogen in the body, right? So they think like BPA, pesticide, DDT, like these are chemicals that are in, cleaning products and personal care products and processed foods, like, right? All of those can cause copper toxicity. And the reason, and again, this could get really sciencey here, but it messes with how your body is using and processing estrogen, right? And copper can act as estrogen and vice versa in the body. So yeah. Birth control. Birth control is a big one. And I'm going to talk about this a little more in detail in a second, but I want to mention that as one. Estrogen hormone replacement therapy. Again, because estrogen and copper have a very particular relationship, it can cause copper toxicity. Copper IUD, copper pipes. If you're in a house, and typically it's older houses. So if you live in an older house, and here's something really important, I think, for you to know as far as the copper pipe situation, because this has been an issue for a handful of clients that have had. If you live in an older house and you don't know, I suggest that you find out if you have copper pipes, because you want to get a really good water filtration system that's going to filter that out, because this can be a huge source of copper in the body if you're drinking water and bathing in water that are coming through copper pipes. So I would definitely find out and get you a good water filtration system. And honestly, I know it's the more expensive route, but I would get a water filtration system for the whole house, because you're bathing and washing your face and all of that in the water, right? So you really need the whole house to be filtered, the water to be filtered. Copper cookware, same thing with copper cookware. Now, using it every now and then is like, okay. But if you're using copper cookware all the time, that could be a source. Bile issues. And this is issues with bile in the body, that it's not binding to the copper to push it out of the body. Copper sulfate, which is a fertilizer, it's organic fertilizer. Chronic stress. And I'm going to talk about that and how that can happen. But basically, and I'll talk about this a few different times. So basically for chronic stress and for a couple of these other ones, it's really about the zinc. Zinc and copper have a very specific relationship. And when our zinc supplies get low, it's going to push copper up. And so when you're in chronic stress, that's one of the zinc is really important for our immune system, right? And it's really important for helping with, kind of inflammatory responses in the body. And so when we're stressed all the time, then our zinc supplies are just going to get just going to run through your zinc supplies. And then thus here goes our copper, right? So that's how chronic stress can lead to it. And that's the thing too. And that's why if you aren't, I'm trying to not say, if you're not like informed, if you're not really knowledgeable on copper, it's kind of just like it's kind of a non-factor, because you're like, well, chronic stress can cause everything. So it's just not because chronic stress can cause all of the symptoms we're going to talk about are symptoms of other things, right? And chronic stress can cause any and all of these in multiple different ways. So that's why sometimes this is just, it's not something that's on a lot of practitioners' radar. Okay, still going on with the list. Sorry, I digress. Slow oxidation. So slow oxidation meaning your metabolism, right? And I've mentioned before this word oxidation and metabolism. Metabolism is not nothing to do with being skinny or not skinny or overweight or not overweight. It's nothing to do with that. Oxidation is the metabolic processes in your body, right? How things are being broken down. You can have skinny people that are slow oxidized, and you can have heavy people who are slow oxidized. There's nothing to do with your body weight. Slow oxidation just means that your body processes, your metabolic processes are slow, right? And so it's not getting rid of things. And so slow oxidation means that you're holding on to things. Generally, when there's toxicity in the body, you're a slow oxidizer. Your body is breaking things down very slowly. And this is typically due from chronic stress and kind of how your nervous system is acting. And it's just your bodily processes have. So usually this means your adrenals are running sluggishly, your thyroid is running sluggishly, you're right. So it's just everything is kind of slowed down, and you're not breaking things down as quickly, which means your body's not getting rid of things as quickly. They're being recirculated in the body. Vegetarian diets can sometimes be a factor to copper toxicity because you're eating a lot of plant-based foods are high in copper. And if you're eating that and not balancing that out with foods that are high in zinc, or at least supplementing, then it's going to lead to copper toxicity. Certain multivitamins, like exposure, just certain occupations, like occupational exposure. If you have, okay, here's another one, gallbladder surgery. And if you don't have a gallbladder because of bile issues, because their gallbladder is your primary storage facility for the bile, and because of bile issues, the copper builds up, right? It's not bound to it, so it gets built up. So those who don't have a gallbladder, or you have gallbladder issues, I mean, I typically recommend for always, right? We're balancing things out, and it's gonna be a case by case basis, but a lot of times I would say we need to supplement with zinc. But there's a fine line here, because we don't want to take too much zinc and then now we're copper deficient. I would also say we would need to supplement for bile acids and like helping the body out. So there's things we would need to support in order to kind of prevent that from happening. So let's talk about the copper IUD. Copper, and this one, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, but so often, and this is, it's just tricky. It's tricky. I get it, y'all. I get it. Ladies, y'all are listening. I get it. It's tricky because you're like, oh, well, the copper IUD seems like it would be a better option because it's non-hormonal, right? I'm not taking synthetic hormones. And you would think that would be the case. But that's the reason it's copper is, like I was saying before, your copper and estrogen have a very specific relationship. It is a tricky line, because you think you're doing that. And that's why I know I see these copper IUD commercials and I'm like, duh, right? Because it's just copper stimulates the production of estrogen, and that's what's happening. And so it's really not doing you much better. And not only that, but you're actually, you're exposed to copper day in and day out. And so if your zinc status is not optimal, if your adrenal health is not good, then I would say you're going to feel the effects of this real quick. For some people, it may be right away. And honestly, I've had clients who they've had copper IUD put in, and it was almost immediately, like within the same day, their body is like, nope, I can't do it. Sometimes it may take several months, and sometimes you may not feel the effects until later, right? And it's the same with the pill. It's the same with the birth control pill. Like, you may not feel the effects right away, but you might feel it later. And I've had clients who they've had an IUD, whether it's copper or hormonal, they've been on the pill years ago, before they ever start working with me, but the effects are still there. And so I would say the pill, not copper IUD isn't as common as taking the pill. The pill is really, for me, and what most of my, fellow practitioners in my field see, is the primary source of copper toxicity in premenopausal women. It's the pill. And you don't have to be on it for that long, and you don't have to be on it now. You could have been on it years ago, because in estrogen, so copper stimulates the production of estrogen, and then estrogen enhances copper retention. So it's like a double-edged sword. So estrogen is making you hold on to more copper. The other piece of this, I want to say that the pill depletes certain minerals, and zinc being one of them. And here's the other thing, elevated tissue copper, like elevated copper in your tissue, also depletes these minerals, right? So it's zinc, B6, it's magnesium, it's vitamin C, it's phosphorus. All of these are leading to very substantial imbalances in the body, right? And you can see, the risks of the pill, and you can go, there's scientific studies that show this, that this isn't me just like bashing the pill just for no reason. You can go look up multiple studies about the pill and see that it does deplete certain minerals. Another thing, you can see that there is, and it'll say on like when you read the very fine print, when you have, the medication, that it does, the risk of blood clot increases. And this is why sometimes people can't be on the pill, because of the risk of blood clot. And this is due to the fact that copper raises tissue calcium and lowers magnesium, so it increases your risk of blood clot. The other thing, it depletes your gut microflora, like your gut microbiome. It's imbalances there, and it promotes yeast and candida overgrowth. So there's all of these factors that are causing imbalances in the body, and that can lead to something like estrogen or copper toxicity, right? So what does the progression of copper buildup look like? Well, first, it could be ongoing exposure, right? If you're consistently exposed to it through, whether it's pipes, whether it's, the pill or copper IUD or whatever. Initially, the body compensates. If you have healthy adrenals, healthy bowel function, zinc stores, your body can compensate, your body can handle it. If not, this is a whole nother story, right? But copper is an excitotoxin, and it stimulates the adrenals. And so it's going to stimulate the production and the use of sodium quicker. Your body's going to use it quicker, which wears out your adrenals. So this is kind of how it progresses right into full on adrenal burnout, is because it's stimulating your adrenals. It's an excitotoxin, similar to like, caffeine is considered an excitotoxin. It stimulates your adrenals. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it's the same effect on the body. So potassium drops, sodium rises, and this just intensifies the stress response. Then magnesium is going to decline, because it's running through your source of magnesium, and your tissue calcium rises. The tissue calcium is a stress response in the body. Then this leads to zinc decline, right? Your zinc stores are going to decline, and the copper just kind of starts to build up, right? Because copper transport is going to decline. You need healthy adrenals for it to be transported. It's going to be transported from there, and it's going to start to build up in your liver. The increase in copper is going to stimulate more estrogen production, right? So now we're looking at an estrogen dominance, and it's going to decrease DHEA. DHEA is like your parent hormone, right? It's the hormone that makes a lot of other hormones. And this is going to be another stressor on the body, because it's going to affect how your body is making, things like cortisol, right? So estrogen stimulates the liver to remove more cholesterol from the blood and divert it to the bile. So this is going to cause the bile to thicken and function to decline. So now your body isn't able to adequately use bile and remove it out of the body, right? So copper removal, it's slowed down even more because of your bile function is lagging, if you will. So now your thyroid and your metabolism are going to decline, because we have higher calcium in the tissue. We have lower potassium that I mentioned before because of the stress response. And so now our thyroid isn't going to be able to function as well. So your metabolism is going to decline. And this could lead to something like a calcium shell. Go back and listen to my episode about the calcium shell if you don't know what that is. But a lot of times, copper toxicity leads to a calcium shell. This is kind of the precursor. It just keeps going from here. Like the effects of it just keep going. Copper stimulates adrenaline. This is going to lead to things like anxiety and panic attacks. And I have a lot of clients that have had anxiety, or that have come to me with anxiety. And sure enough, we look at their labs, copper toxicity is a huge contributing factor. It can lead to things like rashes and hives and eczema, because now histamine breakdown is not going very well. Your body's not able to break down histamine. So you're getting all these skin reactions. You're having trouble like concentrating and thinking, brain fog, memory issues, concentration, all of that, because it's affecting your neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and how it's functioning in the brain. It actually oxidizes serotonin. And so it prevents it from working. And so depression can be a huge thing. Do you see how this can be a contributing factor to so many things? Again, I'm not saying it's the cause of all of them, but it's a contributing factor to so many of these. And again, it's just not because so many practitioners are not looking at mineral levels. They're not seeing this, and it's not something that they're asking about. So when you're looking at symptoms of copper toxicity, just kind of, breaking that down or maybe summing that up, again, it's very broad, but these are things like mental issues, mental health issues, mood issues, low immunity, PMS, weight gain, joint pain, infertility, aggression, candida or chronic yeast infections, lowered just kind of self-awareness, right? Because of kind of the mental capacity that it's affecting, chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, full-on adrenal burnout. Your sex drive can be really affected. So low libido. It can even cause a shift in personality. There's been studies on kind of personality disorders and how this happens. And because it affects your awareness and your kind of emotional state and how you kind of emotional awareness too, because it's affecting your mental capacity. It can cause thyroid issues, constipation, and really just debilitating fatigue and overall mental function is really probably some of the most common, which again, I know is super broad, which is again, why we don't often see or look into it. So in full-on adrenal burnout, a lot of times this is what I find is kind of the cause of adrenal burnout. And I mentioned before how it affects, it's going to stimulate the sodium, the stress response. It elevates sodium. It's going to lead to magnesium and zinc loss in the body. And zinc loss is going to lead to copper buildup. Right. And then it starts this vicious cycle because you need healthy, strong adrenals to be able to transport copper in and out of the body or out of the body. So when your adrenal function goes down, copper buildup just increases, right? It's just this vicious cycle. Copper toxicity is so common with adrenal burnout. And sometimes it's kind of a chicken or egg situation, similar to how we talked about the thyroid and the relationship between the adrenals and the thyroid. It's like a chicken or egg. Well, did the thyroid cause the adrenals to burn out? The adrenals cause, it's one of those things. Either way, it's happening. So we have to support the adrenals when we're looking at copper toxicity. And there's a big one. I mentioned skin conditions before, but there is a big relationship between copper toxicity and skin conditions. Copper depletes zinc, which is important for skin health. Zinc is, important for skin health, immunity, wound healing. And so low zinc slows wound healing. Copper is important for collagen production. So if it's biounavailable, if it's not able to be used, and that's the toxic part, the toxicity is when it's in your tissues, it's biounavailable. And so now we're not able to use it for collagen production. So this is going to lead to skin issues. It's really common in chronic acne, a common cause of chronic acne. And it's also the effect on histamine because, if your body can't break down histamine, it's going to cause things like chronic hives and rashes and flushing and eczema, those kind of things. It's funny because many times I've had clients who have come off the pill and their skin kind of goes crazy. And now there is some hormonal things going on, but a lot of times I do think there is issues going on with copper and your body doesn't know what to do with it. And it can cause things like acne. And really when you have this is going like I'm not kind of going down a rabbit hole here or like off topic, but I want to mention it because if you're listening to this and you have skin issues and things like chronic hives or rashes or flushing, whatever, then it's important to know. But when you have when you have histamine issues, if you have chronic histamine reactions or chronically elevated histamine, or you're just super sensitive to histamine, you have got to dive into copper toxicity. So again, these are things like hives, rashes, flushing, eczema, in acne too. I mean, that's a skin issue too, but things that can cause a histamine reaction, we've got to look into copper toxicity and support your zinc levels, support your copper levels. And here's the other thing. If you're copper toxic, and here's the thing, I want to reiterate this. You have to keep in mind, copper toxicity can happen in a couple of different ways. So copper toxicity can mean that you literally have too much copper, or it can mean that it's biounavailable and that you're deficient in copper. So it's important to understand that. So when I say support your copper levels, you really have to do this from an informed way and have the data to support it to know, should I be taking copper or do I have too much copper? Because either one of those can be having an effect on the histamine reaction. And so I wouldn't just, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh man, I have hives all the time, I wouldn't just go take copper, because you don't know if it's from copper toxicity because you have too much, or copper toxicity because it's in your tissues and you don't have enough. Like, it's important to know that. So just keep that in mind. The other piece of this that gets real tricky is there's such a thing as hidden copper toxicity. And if your adrenals are slow, your metabolism is slow, and the copper isn't moving, your copper might look low or even appear normal on an HTMA. And this is really common in slow oxidizers. Like I mentioned before, if you're a slow oxidizer and you're breaking things down slowly, you're not often going to see high copper on an HTMA unless there's like ongoing exposure, like you're drinking out of copper pipes every day or whatever, or you have a copper IUD, but it's not often. So when I'm looking for hidden copper toxicity, I'll just kind of run through, and I'm not going to tell you all the numbers, but I'm just going to run through the list. There's a little like 12 little check boxes that I'm looking at. So I'm looking at a certain level of calcium, so high calcium, low sodium, and there's certain levels that we're meeting here for looking at HMA, but high calcium, low sodium, low potassium. If your copper is over a certain amount or under a certain amount, same thing with zinc, if it's too high or too low, if your phosphorus is low. And then we're looking at your ratios of calcium to potassium, sodium to potassium. We're looking at, and those are like, looking at ratios that are like your thyroid ratio, your adrenal ratio, your nervous system ratio. We're looking at the zinc to copper ratio because that's your hormone ratio. Is it too high? Is it too low? We're looking at mercury because that's going to be something that your body's going to hold on to with copper toxicity. So, and then of course, we look at history of exposure. We look at, there's a copper to molybdenum ratio that we're looking at, but we're looking at all of these factors. And I just read through those just so you have an idea. But the point is, we have to look at all of these, and we have to make sure that we're correlating that to symptoms, right? And we're looking at, okay, is there past exposure? Is there past exposure? Is there current exposure, right? Are we correlating the symptoms? So this is when we're looking at, this is the premise of functional medicine and functional nutrition. If you have a practitioner that's doing it the best way. I don't want to say the right way because I don't like using that word, but if they're doing it in the best way possible, they're not just looking at your labs. And that's the thing with that really separates conventional medicine from functional medicine, is because in conventional medicine, and this is generally speaking, I know there are some practitioners or some doctors who do a really good job of looking at you as a human being and not as a lab result, but generally speaking, you run labs and they just look at the labs. They're not looking at your symptoms. They're not looking at your history of a lot of things. They're not looking at your lifestyle. It's just the lab results. You are your lab results. And that's not how it works. We are not our lab results. And so when I'm telling you this, like, oh, there could be hidden toxicity, copper toxicity, it may not show up. And you're like, well, crap, what's the point? The point is, you have to correlate it to symptoms. And this is why I run multiple labs, because there are other labs that have little markers that point to copper toxicity. You have to put the whole equation together. And that's one of the big points I want to leave you with, is me talking through this. And I wanted to start the wheels, like get the wheels kind of turning in your head, get the gears going in your head to think like, maybe this is something I should look into. I'm not telling you to self-diagnose listening to this, but I am hoping that it gets your gears turning. And, if you're constantly exposing yourself to some of the things I was just talking about, it could be a sign that, hey, maybe I need to look into those things. And maybe I need to consider getting off the pill or getting the copper IUD out, or, whatever, or the regular IUD. It doesn't even have to be the copper IUD, getting off the birth control, getting out the IUD out. I just wanted to start a conversation in your head. And I wanted to get the gears turning of you just kind of maybe connecting some dots. And it's really the whole premise of why I do this show. I just want you to have a better understanding of what's going on in your body, and a better understanding of potential root causes of what's happening in your body. This is not to self-diagnose. This is not to say, oh, this is for sure what's happening to you. Because again, with functional medicine, it's all about putting all the pieces together. And I get I'm going down a tangent here, but this has happened fairly frequently in recent months. I've had clients come to me, and then I've had people who've had functional health assessment calls with me who were, interested in working together. and they've worked with other practitioners, and there's just so many holes. And this isn't bashing other practitioners, because I also know that there are plenty of holes in the functional medicine world too. And functional medicine doctors sometimes don't have the time like regular doctors, right, to put into clients like they might need. And I think that's the beauty of what I do as an FDN and what other FDNs do, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioners. What we do is we're able to put in that time and that research and that give that extra accountability and support. But I have had so many people come to me in recent months, and it's either functional medicine doctor or their naturopath or whatever. They've run like a lab or two, and they've found certain things, and then that's kind of it. And they come to me and they're like, well, I don't really know what to do now. Like, they told me this and this, but then like, okay, so now what? Or they say this, they found, this and this in the lab, or the lab or two that they run, and they kind of give them a protocol, and they're like, okay, good luck. And first of all, one or two labs isn't going to show you all the data that you need to know. Second of all, a lot of times they're doing blood labs. And while yes, blood labs can be helpful in certain situations and circumstances, I'm not a fan of just running blood labs. It's not going to tell you everything. And then third of all, now some people do okay, running their own protocols, and they are self-driven, but a lot of times you need that extra support. You need the hand holding, and you need that support when you have questions, because things come up and you give them the protocol and something reacts weird. Your body starts doing something weird, and you're like, well, I don't know. Is it this? Is it this? I don't know. So I just find that, again, this is my tangent, but sometimes there are holes in functional medicine too. And I say that for if you're listening and you've gone the functional medicine route and you feel a little jaded, or you're like, well, crap, that didn't work either. Not all functional practitioners are the same. And sometimes functional med doctors or naturopaths, whatever, they don't have the time to put into really looking in like as deep into your case as maybe they should, or they just they aren't following a process that looks as deep as it should, right? They're running kind of minimal labs, or maybe they haven't run labs at all. I've had some who've worked with naturopaths and stuff, and they haven't run any labs at all. I'm like, well, how do you know what's going on then? So anyway, I digress yet again, but I want to just make that clear. And it does tie into this, because copper toxicity is such a it can be kind of in some ways it's kind of this esoteric thing that not everybody understands, but in some ways too, it's just really, it can be vague and unclear, because it's a broad topic, and the symptoms can mimic so many other things. It's one of those that you just have to correlate with other labs and symptoms. And really the HTMA is the key for here, because it's going to show you like all those markers I just read through, like it's going to show all of those. So I want to leave you with kind of and again, I wouldn't recommend you do like a copper toxicity protocol on yourself without knowing if you actually have copper toxicity. So if you're interested in running an HTMA, reach out. We can run one. I can do, a results and recommendations review, and you can know for a fact, for sure. But if we're looking at supporting it, we first want to support your just basic overall minerals. I usually call these like the first level minerals. These are like the basic, the macro minerals, like the ones we need the most of, just supporting that in your oxidative state. Because a lot of times, most of the time, you can be a fast oxidizer and be copper toxic, but most of the time it's slow oxidizers. You want to support the oxidative state. And either way, if you're a super fast oxidizer, we want to slow it down. So you want to support your oxidative state, or your metabolic rate, right? We want to support that. We want the right minerals to be able to support that. We want to address any relevant copper exposure. If you're having ongoing exposure, you want to address that, because it's just going to keep happening. We want to support your adrenals. We want to support it with proper amounts of sodium and potassium, right? We want to support the adrenals in the best way possible. If the adrenals are totally tanked and totally struggling, maybe we want to add in a glandular. Maybe that's the way we want to support the adrenals. We want to support it with things like vitamin C and chromium and MSM, and all of these can help kind of push the copper out, kind of nudge the copper out. We want to support digestion and bile flow. We want to make sure if you're not pooping regularly, we are not going to do a copper protocol. Like, we've got to support digestion. We've got to support regular poops. Stress reduction. I mean, because like I said, chronic stress can lead to copper toxicity. And that's the thing I find with a lot of clients. I would say it's kind of half and half. Half of my clients have had exposure, whether it's with birth control or whatever. The other half have no ongoing exposure, and it's just from chronic stress. And again, it's kind of talking about when we're talking about the adrenals and you need properly functioning adrenals to push it out. That can be the root cause, right? So supporting stress reduction, we want to support your liver, your gallbladder, free flowing bile, make sure your bile is flowing. In the most important thing, and that's why I say if you're going to do like a copper protocol, if all of this is ringing a bell and you're like, oh my gosh, this is me, run an HTMA, whether it's with me or with somebody else, and work with somebody who is knowledgeable on this, because do not, and I repeat, do not do a copper detox before your body is ready, because there is such a thing called copper dump syndrome. You will feel like total crap and you will make things worse. And I'm not saying it wouldn't get better after it gets worse, because it's possible, but it's just, you're going to feel like crap, and it can cause, it's just not a good situation. So I recommend doing an HTMA. And this, as I mentioned in the HTMA episode, go listen to that if you haven't already. It's the cheapest functional lab, y'all. It's like 50 or $55. It's the cheapest functional lab. You're not having to spend hundreds of dollars, which a lot of them cost hundreds of dollars. Sometimes I have people that use their HSA and FSA to pay for it, the cheap lab. So it's not expensive at all. Do the HTMA. It's worth it. Get you a session with somebody who knows how to read an HTMA and do it the safe way. So I hope that this gave you some insight and gave you some conversation starters in your own mind and what's going on in your body, and gave you a little insight into copper and copper toxicity. And I would love to know your thoughts on this, your questions. Reach out. I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to reach out to ask about an HTMA, if you want to do that. I do run an HTMA and have a little like mini program where you do an HTMA. I give you one little results and recommendations review, and then your personalized protocol. So I'll put a link. You can message me or shoot me an email if you want info on that. I'll put a link to, actually, that's called the Reset. So I'll put a link to that too. And I will see y'all next time.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's at @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.